Well, Kevin, thank you very much for the opportunity this morning, everyone at Farming Smarter, your conference and trade show. As Kevin mentioned, yes, RBC has done extensive research in where farming, we believe, the shortage is going to be and where it needs to go. So outlined in my presentation today, I'm going to highlight what we have done with Farmer 4.0. It was launched in August of last year, conversation across Canada in Moncton, Montreal, Ottawa, Cambridge, Abbotsford. In late August, it was initially launched in Saskatoon, and John Stackhouse came here to talk to the community, a small group of 125 on Farmer 4.0. The country seems to see strategic opportunity, but it's not just about agriculture. This is the fourth industrial revolution. We're at a historic moment, rise of new technologies and massive demographic shifts. We have rapidly shifting demand for skills and jobs. We have a $40 billion opportunity for youth productivity, and agriculture can add $11 billion to our growth in GDP by 2030. I'll outline today what some of the best schools and employers are doing and what some countries are doing in the agriculture field. And of course, as I mentioned at the outset, what we need to do, the call to action. So again, you may ask, why is RBC, through our thought leadership and our economics group, in this conversation? Well, we believe Canada's prosperity is at stake. We have two revolutions that are impacting. We have digital and we've got our demographics. Digital and smart technologies, cloud, mobile, chips, and the powerful semiconductors. We're creating the internet of the farm. We need to seize on all of these opportunities. We have a very, very significant mass exodus of our most knowledgeable and experienced workers. Adds up to, as we've done our research, 250,000 retirements this year, akin to the entire workforce of Newfoundland and Labrador. Yet, the largest youth population ever in Canada, nearly 7 million between the ages of 15 to 29. So our commitment, as a community partner, as I mentioned earlier, back a few years ago, Dave Mackay, our CEO at RBC, made a commitment to youth, a 10-year commitment of $500 million to invest in their skills, their transitioning. And as an employer, we're ensuring we're doing our part, enhancing cooperative programs. And I know a number of employers in this community are doing that with the skills that are dramatically changing. And we, back in 2018, through our thought leadership group, we did 12 months of research on Humans Wanted. And I'll just give some highlights of the Humans Wanted report, Canada and the Age of Disruption. That's why we embarked on this research in the Canadian skills economy. We looked at over 2 million jobs, 300 occupations. We brought in our research analysts to look at algorithms, team of data scientists, and our economists to kind of look at this report, which is a 50-page report, which is available for anyone if they so wish. But in identifying the humans wanted, over the next 4 years, there's going to be 2.4 million job opportunities nationally. 1/4 of these jobs will face significant risk of disruption over the next decades. Our research found that human skills, soft skills, are the most important for job openings over the next few years. So that's collaboration, communication, critical thinking, complex problem solving. These skills are not only growing in importance, They lay the foundation of new era of skills mobility. So quickly looking at the skills mobility, today's youth will have 5 to 6 careers. How do we help them control their journey? The biggest finding was most jobs are connected by a group of specific skills, and they provide pathways for these disrupted workers. So as we did our Humans Wanted research over that 12-month period, we visited 12 cities, held 36 discussions, and engaged over 5,000 Canadians. We met with youth, teachers, post-secondary leaders, small business owners, the agriculture community, nonprofit leaders, and policy makers. Humans Wanted has been downloaded more than 12,000 times, and we've attracted over 82 million impressions on social media. So some of the highlights: Canadians want more. They need a greater blend of disciplines. We need to understand the challenge of Indigenous youth and the opportunity for women, how to measure foundational skills, and also see the newest skills and jobs are in some of the oldest sectors. So laying that foundation, we are here. Farmer 4.0, as I said, was launched, a 20-page report, which we did bring copies today. You can either download it or they are at the front reception for you. So again, this was a 4-month study by RBC researchers and our economists. We had interviews, as I mentioned, across Canada in production, industry, academia, and we had consultations in Saskatoon and Guelph, and data from the Canadian Agriculture Human Resources Council. So if you look at this, a world of 9 billion will need more Canada. 9 billion in 2030, that's what the population is projected to be in the world. That's close to adding a 1 billion more people. The number that we say is about 890 million people by 2030 will be added to the globe. Only 4 million of that growth will come from Canada. The largest growth is expected in India and Nigeria, neither in the top 10 of Canada's export destinations. We have the land, water, market access, and here in Canada, our schools, we have the top 6 schools out of 100 in the world. Often overlooked, though, is human capital, whether we have enough people with the right skills. On current trends, within 10 years, we'll be short 123,000 Canadian workers in the agriculture sector. As I mentioned earlier, Canada stands to gain $11 billion to boost agriculture GDP by 2030 over business as usual forecast by closing the labor gaps and raising productivity to the industry's long run average. Agriculture has been the productivity champion in Canada for the last 20 years at 5.5% annually, but has slowed in recent years and expected to drop to about 1.5% below average. Productivity gains are critical to competing globally. To get there, we believe we need to focus on both skills development and technology innovation in the agriculture sector. Canada and the US, Canada and the US share globally, their share of global exports has fallen since 2000, as developing countries like China, India, Indonesia, and Brazil produce and sell more to the world. And there's a graph in the Farmer 4.0 that you'll be able to look to see exactly what we mean by that. The agriculture industry in Canada is heading into a decade of demographic and technology disruption that will lead to further skills intensification. Our demographics in agriculture, average age is 55, in construction it's 42. We're heading to a retirement cliff in agriculture. 1 in 4 farmers over age 65 by 2025, with over 110,000 expect to retire over the next 10 years. Each year, 600 fewer youth are entering primary agriculture, even as enrollment in agriculture programs is increasing. Technology, data a central input to farm decisions today. 95% of large farms have invested in advanced technology. Automation a reality, with farm laborers exposed to 97% risk. No job is immune from interacting with new data and devices in the agriculture sector. These shifts will put productivity under intense pressure, where boosting skills and innovation are needed for growth in the sector. If we look at the Farmer 4.0 over the past kind of 4 revolutions, of course we had the early 20th century Canadian farmer who toiled on a small farm using human labor and animal labor. And then machinery came into play, the second with the emergence in the halfway mark of the 20th century, diesel and gas-powered tractors and other machines transformed farming. And then Farmer 3.0, by the 1980s, urbanization and other factors had greatly thinned the agriculture sector's ranks, but software and advances in crop genetics allowed them to produce far more with less. And here we are today, Farmer 4.0, automation and analytics are the new tools. Farm operators in the next decade are going to need to leverage data, automation, to track products from field to delivery truck. There will be more diverse, highly skilled, and innovative workers on the farms. Increasingly, a knowledge-based industry. So on the next slide, meeting Farmer 4.0. So the key characteristics that we see of the farmer of the future, they're going to be innovative, test new approaches, and work with new partners. Highly skilled, they're going to embrace lifelong learning with a focus on communications, digital, and global skills. They will be data-driven, relying on data as much as experiences to make decisions. Diverse, the Farmer 4.0 seeks a wide range of employees, partners, and suppliers to solve complex problems. So an example of this is Matt and Jacqueline Walker, Woodstock Dairy Farm, a young couple who didn't see farming as viable for them until they added a robotic milking machine. Now, Matt is able to work full-time in his veterinarian role, and they're able to problem solve using their skills, able to use new tools and have the outputs on their dairy farm. And as you can see here, Matt is sharing his knowledge and his passion in showing youth that this career is possible. Food producers of the future. To illustrate the changing skills in the industry, we clustered all agriculture roles into 5 skills categories. So the traditional roles, the decider, yourselves here today, the farmer operators who put capital to work and determine which technologies will be used. The doers, the laborers who work with machines and technology and face the most automation risk. We have the transformation jobs, we have the enablers, the advancer, and the specialists. So the enablers being the engineers and the installers who identify the next generation of technologies, the specialists, the science and technologists who are going to transform these operations, and the advisors, the agronomists and other advisors who connect operators to the world opportunities for you. So let's take a closer look at 3 of these roles. So here we have in Saskatchewan DOT, software and mechanical engineers monitoring this driverless tractor. Of course, many of you would know DOT is named after the founder's mother, Dorothy. So the enablers are going to represent the skills needed to bring the new productivity enhancing technologies that will drive farm operations to be digitally enabled. They're going to be, as I mentioned earlier, engineers, electricians, computer technicians. And by 2030, we see 25,000 enablers. This is going to be the highest growth skill set required in farming. 9% increase over today's demand. Agriculture will need to compete for these high-tech workers, and they will need software knowledge, the business acumen, and leadership and communication as key skills that we've identified. Specialists. Specialists are the source of productivity in many operations, ensuring that that you have the right tools, techniques, and knowledge to be used in the day-to-day operations. They are our plant scientists, our livestock managers, regulatory experts, as we've heard earlier from Brian, and others. By 2013, 18,000 specialists are going to be needed, with upwards of 1/4 of these roles being unfilled. They'll need to be increasingly work with experts outside of agriculture, interfacing with artificial intelligence, blockchain, and intellectual property. And they'll need new skills. They'll have to have data analytics, judgment, and decision making. And of course, similar to the role previous, communication skills are going to be key. Advisors. Advisors are highly educated and experienced consultants, and they are our strategic thinkers. The agronomists, logistics, financial advisors, and other advisors that help the operators yourselves make the big decisions. By 2013, or by 2030, we see 18,000 advisors to evaluate and interpret data and to recommend action to boost productivity at the farm level. They'll need interdisciplinary learning and experience in the field. And of course, their new skills are going to be critical thinking, mathematicians, analytics, written and verbal communication. Many of the advisors are here today at Farming Smarter. Your diversity of skills and experience you have accumulated allows you to work with clients, agriculture clients, to assess and deploy productivity enhancing tools and identify the right mix of data, equipment, and processes to boost efficiencies. Automation is here. How many of you have seen this type of machine out? Not many. So this is a strawberry harvester in California. Once it reaches 80% efficiency, it will be considered viable to replace field laborers, answers to unpredictable labor in that region. We hear from our clients they will assume shorter payback periods of machine investment in light of labor shortages. Awareness and comfort with tech remains barriers for many. 95% of farm operations with $1 million plus in sales already use advanced technology, compared to 60% of farms who have annual revenues less than $100,000. 81% of operators under the age of 40 use advanced technologies, compared with 57% over the age of 60. 4 times agriculture rise in machinery spending versus the rest of the economy over the past 20 years. Yet, tech transformation is very uneven across agriculture in Canada. Today, greenhouses produce $3.50 in revenue for every dollar in labor, while grains and cattle sectors produce $34 in revenue, as already heavily mechanical. So our ag, Canada is falling behind 3.4% of our share of global ag tech. So we're outpaced by the US, India, which are key exports. And as I mentioned, we're only attracting 3.4% of the global ag tech investment, which last year was US $16.9 billion. And this number is up 43% from 2017. So the advancement of technologies and investment is very significant. We need to recognize the link between innovation and skills development. Here in Canada, we import 2/3 of our ag equipment, around which we design our skills, training, and job descriptions, in effect, importing knowledge systems. So what does this all mean to Farmer 4.0? Well, more entrepreneurial, leverage new tech and skills, what the sector has done best for over 100 years. Digital fluency, recognize data is everything, levering the potential of technology. Human resource skills for Farmer 4.0, identifying the skills needed and filling those key roles. Cultural awareness, export to new markets and preferences, and welcoming more workers from different backgrounds. Financial management for Farmer 4.0, making major decisions on technology, business product, and tech, in an already capital-intensive industry. And as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be lifelong learning for our Farmer 4.0, commit to learning new business model and using the tools of tomorrow. It's rapidly changing. And getting the skills and technology right, we'll see very, very significant productivity enhancement. So a little insight into what other countries are doing. So in the Netherlands, a very small country, innovating in greenhouse automation, food and processing hub, producing 3 times the food exports than Canada per capita, with 3% of the land that they have compared to us here. Norway, they have an aquaculture cluster, specialized training and tech innovation together, aims to produce $7.8 billion in aquatech exports by 2030. In California, back to that slide I showed earlier, breeding strawberry crops that can be more easily harvested by autonomous fruit pickers. And in Israel, nearly half of the public research and development directed towards regional agriculture centers. And in Australia, using blockchain to manage beef production, the beef ledger that shows cattle intake, health and growth, improve food and safety, and consumer confidence. So how will we get there? Among our call to action, we'd like to see, and we've put this in writing in our Farmer 0.0, and we're communicating, we'd like to see the federal government convene a national skills strategy for agriculture that looks to the future needs of the industry and sets out a plan to build the needed skills and talent. We need a coordinated effort of the diverse industry groups across sectors, provinces, towards a bold campaign to attract and retain new workers, focus more on youth, women, Indigenous peoples, and new Canadians. Point 3, we need to invest more in agriculture R&D with a cluster approach, bringing in students and educators early to build these new skills. 4th, name agriculture as a key sector to the National Work Integrated Learning Strategy and increase exposure of computer sciences, engineering, business students to agriculture. And 5th, government, industry, and educators to look abroad to innovators and find models we can build upon to boost the skills in agriculture. So in conclusion, this is a historic moment where the agriculture revolution and the skills revolution become one. Canada needs to seize on this opportunity, seeking agriculture as an engine of innovation and exports. We need to get more players engaged in this conversation, including youth. While the future of agriculture will be led by Farmer 4.0, climate change, soil conditions, trade barriers, capital costs, market prices, they all play a big role, but so do skills. Agriculture has always been central to Canada's well-being. One of the keys to our ongoing economic health is embracing the technology and the skills revolution. We have the land and the water, we have market access, we have the Canadian food brand, and we have an education system to develop the farmers and food producers who can thrive in a hyper-connected, data-driven economy by investing in the skills that will share Farmer 0.0. Canada can capture this enormous opportunity for the benefit of our people, our economy, and the world. So let's let the conversation begin. Again, thank you for allowing us to be part of Farming Smarter. We appreciate the opportunity to share our insights. As I mentioned, we have our Farmer 4.0. You can either download that, and of course we have many podcasts that we have through our RBC Disruptor series, driven by John Stackhouse, our Senior Vice President, Office of the CEO. So please take the opportunity to either look at Humans Wanted, but of course more specifically Farmer 4.0, which we've got a copy here for you today. So with the next remaining time, as Kevin mentioned, the opportunity to have some dialogue with David and with Trevor, but also with yourselves. We do have 2 mics set up here in the auditorium for us to be able to field your questions from the audience. If we don't have the answer, certainly either David, Trevor, or myself will get back to you directly. So again, thank you for allowing us to be part of this conference. And as I said, let's get the conversation going. So Trevor, and there they are, both of them. We're going to move the chairs up to the front here. Thank you. So who wants to go first? I'm looking at Trevor. He's a bit jet-lagged, just coming in from across the big ocean. But let's start with you, Trevor. Any thoughts that kind of resonated on Farmer 4.0 and how that's going to impact the economy locally here in the Lethbridge area?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I was, as you mentioned, just rolled in last night from the airport. I was actually in Paris last week on vacation, but managed to sneak into the Food Ingredient Europe trade show, and there were about 1,500 exhibitors there, about 20,000 people in attendance. And the striking thing that I noticed is the amount of technology discussion at that event. So this is a food ingredient show, but a significant chunk of the agenda was all about new technologies, the integration of technologies, lots of conversations happening amongst all of the attendees from around the world around how there is a skill gap and how a lot of these, it's a common theme throughout. So it's primary production, it's value-added processing, it's weaving its way all the way through. So I think we're not special in that sense. It has broad implications across the whole value chain.
I'm going to continue that dialogue. Thank you very much, Trevor, on that. So to you, David, the question, who do you look for in the global leaders in the agriculture education, and what have you learned from collaborating with institutions around the globe or in the US and Europe, and what are we doing locally here in Lethbridge?
So I think the conversation we're having that Farmer 4.0 is part of is something that actually has been occurring in southern Alberta for a little while. And at the university and even at Lethbridge College, there's been a big push from industry to make sure that in addition to the skill sets that students can leave with related to production agriculture and agronomy and plant science and animal science, a real recognition that if we had a deficit in the kind of training and experiences we can offer students, it was really in the business side of agriculture. How do you take a look at managing agricultural enterprises that, while they may be growing here locally, are really going to be of global significance? And so with partners and with investment from industry, and in particular investment from Dr. Corvan Ray, both the university and the college work together to create new academic programming in ag enterprise management. And that programming is being delivered now and is going to continue to evolve, because this is an area where things on the ground are changing quickly. We've looked to other countries that are doing some things that are very, very successful. We have partnerships with folks in the Netherlands at Wageningen University. We're working with folks at University of California, Davis, and others, so that we can kind of harvest the best ideas and then apply them locally. And I think from my own personal experience, one of the things I've watched a lot lately has been work being done with a colleague and friend of mine, Dr. David Zilberman at University of California, Berkeley, where they're now looking at consumer food demands globally And what does that mean as you start to work backwards from consumers to production? And so while all of us are used to words like farm to fork, in this industry it's now becoming from plate to gate. And how do we begin to give students and others the opportunity to really focus on what those consumer demands are and use that to create new value and improve value all the way through that supply chain?
Thank you, David. Trevor, to you, in seeing technologies here in southern Alberta, and as David has outlined, and you know, when you're in France at the conference, tell me or share with us, one project here in southern Alberta that is using advanced technologies that you're seeing, which has significant economic benefit to here the city of Lethbridge, or even broader the world for that matter.
Thanks for the question, Kevin. Some of the folks in the audience will remember a panel discussion at this event last year where Jefferson Gardner from Inbridge was here, and we had a bit of a panel discussion actually about the integration of technologies. We're linking AI, artificial intelligence with big data, how that then translates into automated systems. And so some of that work that's happening right here in Lethbridge is working with producers, working with growers, linking production in their field through to their customer. And that's things like smart contracts that allow money to change hands very, very quickly and eliminate some administrative work, which I think everybody is quite happy to take part in. But more importantly, it's how do we make better decisions with more information? And we've seen a number of local companies develop technology in that area, which is exciting. We always want to have that skill and that talent locally, but we're seeing local producers take advantage of it. And honestly, there's some great pilots happening in this region that have garnered interest from around the world. So that's the exciting part, is Lethbridge is very much on the leading edge. There's lots of great things happening right here that are being recognized.
Trevor, thank you, and I'm going to pick up on the world. And David, the University of Lethbridge attracts an impressive number of international students to its agriculture programs. To what do you attribute this success to? And how has it changed the way the University of Lethbridge is teaching?
So it's interesting in that our international student population continues to grow across our campus. What we're finding, particularly in the area of agriculture, and it's one of the challenges that we have that we're tackling in a much more intentional way, is that the pockets of expertise that we have that have attracted students to our campus are sometimes a little bit diffuse across the campus and not as well integrated. And while the expertise is there, it's not always easy to find. So one of our strategic goals now is to begin to integrate all of these skills so that we can begin to present opportunities to students that allow them a lot more control over what their future career path is. So in Farmer 4.0, I was very interested to see the kinds of competencies that the research team there saw that students needed. And those are the same competencies that we're looking for students: complex problem solving, critical thinking, communication, all of those things that we have in the past, I think, downplayed a little bit because we call them soft skills. They're actually high in demand, required, essential strategic skills. And so we've been looking even at our curriculum across all of our disciplines in what is it that's happening within that classroom environment that will leave the student with the ability to gain those skills. And part of that is through competitions, part of it's through case studies, part of it's through work integrated learning, co-ops, and internships. What we're finding with international students is that they may come to campus with an idea of what they want to do in their undergraduate or graduate work, but as they get here and find a little bit more about the community, we're seeing more and more interest turn to what makes Southern Alberta special. And so that's where we see the opportunities in production agriculture, but even more so in the business side of how do we create new value-added small to medium enterprises that can cut their teeth here, but really have a global focus, because that's where the demand is going to be.
If I could just add to that, I think one of the things the university and the college have both done is become more industry driven. There's a keen understanding that academic institutions in the past have sort of been ivory towers unto themselves a little bit. And more we're seeing that outreach from campus to industry, understanding what's actually required and align those programs. So the thing that I think sets apart both the University of Lethbridge and Lethbridge College is the fact that the programming is very directly related to what industry is needing, and it's really tied to those needs, which is not necessarily the case of all of our colleges and universities in Alberta. So that, I think, is a key advantage here. And part of the reason international students are being drawn to Lethbridge, to David's point, is the fact that we recognize what makes us different, and that's of interest to different groups around the world.
Good. Thank you both. Trevor, I'm going to continue the dialogue with you on the economic benefit of a strong agriculture community. We've seen tremendous growth here in the Lethbridge area, in southern Alberta. When you look at the data from how it contributes to the vibrancy, the growth, and the number that was shared earlier, this is $11 billion opportunity by 2030 if we invest. What is the economic benefit to southern Alberta and to the city of Lethbridge?
Right, I mean, not to go all numbers geek on everyone, but the Lethbridge economy, 1/5 of our economy locally is directly tied to primary agriculture. So 20% of our entire economy is tied to all of the folks in this room. And I don't think a lot of people understand how significant that is. But it's an even bigger number when you look at insurance and you look at manufacturing and you look at value-added food. I would argue that the impact of agriculture in Lethbridge is at least half of the economy. 20% we can measure directly, but it's probably half or more indirectly. And when you look at Alberta's track record over the last couple of years, Lethbridge has weathered fairly well relative to the rest of the province. When I talk to my peers in Grand Prairie, in Red Deer, in Medicine Hat, we are very much the envy of the province, and that doesn't mean people haven't had issues. Clearly there's been people hurt in Lethbridge with the downturn, but Lethbridge has fared relatively well. We saw 5.6% GDP growth in 2017. We saw north of 5% again in 18. 19 is very much on track to do 2.5%, almost 3%, which is very different numbers than the rest of the province. And that to me right there says a lot about why agriculture matters in our region. It is our expertise. We have incredible skills both in our post-secondaries, in our producer groups, in various research institutions, private industry. We have the opportunity to truly be a global food hub. And so for me, that's the significance, is it underscores our future. To your point, Farmer 4.0 is all about the future of ag for Canada and how agriculture is Canada's competitive position. Well, I always use the hashtag that, Southern Alberta feeds the world, and that's totally true. And every time I speak, I talk about this three-letter acronym called TWD. I firmly believe that total world domination is the goal of our region, and that's what we can really be about because we have all of the right ingredients. And Farmer 4.0 for me just underscores all of our competitive advantages, but it is our future, frankly.
I'm going to turn to the delegates. I did mention in my kind of closing remarks, we wanted to hear either your comments directly to share with the audience. As I said, let's start this conversation. It's critical to the success of Canada and to the agriculture. Are there any questions you'd like to ask of either David or Trevor or myself, or heck, you can even ask a question of someone that's in the audience if you want to put them on the spot to respond. We have the two mics right there if you have any questions. I do know that Trevor and David will be around. I will be around shortly after the presentation to take any questions one-on-one if you want to ask specifically about. So I'll give you just, as I see someone move to the mic, then we'll go to the mic and allow you to ask the question. So, but I'll go back to David, your comment about California, the university down there, but I just want to, what other countries and educators are standing out as the global leaders in transformation in agriculture? I outlined kind of 6 countries that are just doing an incredible job in increasing their exports. Well, Canada and US as a growing opportunity, we're shrinking our exports as a percentage basis. So what countries and educators that you're looking at, David?
So I think to a large degree there are some that really do stand out. It's interesting if you look at the value of food exports in dollar terms and compare that to the bulk volume of goods that are traded. If you want to find out the country in the world that has the most exports in tonnage is the United States. The country that exports the most food in dollar terms, in actual dollar value, is the United States. If you take a look at who's number 2 in dollar terms in exports in the whole world, it's the Netherlands. On value, Canada's about anywhere between 9th to 11th, whereas in tonnage, we're 5th. So I think it speaks to the fact that there is a huge opportunity that exists right now that has been running below the surface. And I think we've done a disservice to students and maybe to the economy by not being a lot more forceful and intentional about the role that agriculture, agri-food, all of the surrounding new technologies have to play in creating a very sustainable economic engine. When we were working with industry, with the college and the university to develop the new programming, what we found is there's lots of agribusiness programs across North America. They almost all focus universally on the production side of agriculture. We focus on that as well, but we're really trying to leverage the next set of value and wealth that comes from our land base, from our people skills, from technology, and those are the things I think we have to begin to capitalize on. And just a little bit of a plug for this region, and Trevor can speak to this as well, is we somehow seem to live in a region where collaboration and cooperation is kind of a normal type of behavior. And it's been identified as one of the greatest needs and competencies for future success in global business, is having that kind of collaboration. And we're much too quiet about how good we are. Even in the ag tech side, Planet Labs out of San Francisco, one of their major offices is here in Lethbridge. Farmer's Edge, which provides satellite-based agronomic services around the world. Their software development site is here. It's not in Silicon Valley. Decisive Farming, which is another precision farming organization, is led by a U of L alum. We have a lot of these things here. And to some degree, it's occurred naturally. Now we have to ramp it up and be very intentional, and I think really push hard. And so things like Farmer 4.0 add to that. Rob Sykes' recent book on Food 5.0 is a real mirror of it. And now we have to take all of that focus on production agriculture and also tie it to that next potential of growing wealth by looking at global markets and consumer products.
Thank you, David. I just want to add a few more comments to the Netherlands. I get there at least once a year. Our son resides in the Netherlands, and I'm just overwhelmed by what, and here's some statistics, and you will be able to read it for yourself. It's the birthplace of the greenhouse, world's second largest food exporter behind the US, which is 101 billion of products. 50% of the world's floriculture exports, a third of the world's vegetable seeds come out of the Netherlands, and 20% of the world's tomatoes come out of the Netherlands. So those are just some highlights, despite only ranking 135th in the world by way of land area. So I just wanted to share further on that. Trevor, I'm going to turn to you, and we've provided the insights on Farmer 4.0. What do you see as those critical skills that has been laid out, and what are you witnessing on the Farmer 4.0 on those critical skills for the next workers, doers, specialists, enablers?
It's a bit of a contradiction in the sense that we're seeing on both ends of the spectrum, right? So I was just talking to Daryl from DB Audio, by the way, if we want to give him a shout out, the AV sound guy today, Daryl down here. But we were just chatting about how sometimes it's the fundamental skills, the basic skills, right? So agriculture is fundamentally different from a lot of businesses. So when you're handling live animals, live plants, That requires some considerations around food safety. We have to teach people why it's different than handling, other commodities sometimes, or finished goods or packaged products. So that's part of it. It's helping them understand some of those key distinctions, right? And then it's also the bigger, broader skills around the technology and how does it fit, and even things like coding. So we've been teaching a coding workshop, for example, for the last few months, and teaching people how to build their own apps, less so that they can make money off an app, but more to go through that process. But after a 6-week program, we can have somebody with an app on the App Store. That's an important core skill for producers, for people to understand what goes into making those processes, how to troubleshoot automated systems, for example. You don't need to understand necessarily the ladder logic or the controls that go into an automated system, but how does that system function so that if there is a problem, you know how it works. So we're having to teach people, it's not just about green button on, red button off, but how is that automated system making decisions? How do you input those things and make that work, right?
I think maybe if I can add something to that. One of the discussions we're just at the beginning stages of is, at a university we're really focused on undergraduate students and graduate students. We're growing our graduate student population. I had a chance a couple weeks ago to visit with Janet Lane and Carlo Dade from the Canada West Foundation, and they're doing some work on some research in work integrated learning and skill sets. And what came out of that conversation was a conversation that we've been having on our campus, in the need for us to take a look at how do we service the professional population that's out there that also needs to benefit from these new skills and technology revolutions. And so we've begun the discussion around micro-credentials, professional micro-credentials. How can we make sure that not only are we benefiting students into the careers they're going into, but how can we work with the professionals who are already in those careers to help them get a leg up and be ahead of where things are going in the next while. So that's an exciting time for us. It's a little bit different approach in what we've done, but I think it also is a response to what's needed in the community.
So the comment shared earlier, that lifelong learner, and making sure that they are coming back as the agriculture sector is changing dramatically and changing quickly, to be able to adapt and to gain those new skills. So what do we need to do quickly here over the next 1 to 2 years? You're changing programs at the University of Lethbridge, Lethbridge College, other colleges and universities across Canada and the world. What is the absolute critical thing we need to do quickly so we can make sure that we participate in this growth over the next number of years? The next decade, as I said, we're going to be 9 billion in people around this world, close to 1 billion new people. So what do we need to do? What's the critical thing for the next 1 to 2 years? I'll go to David first, and then I'll go to Trevor, please.
So I think giving it a post-secondary look for the university and the college here, but also to look at Alberta's post-secondary system. I think there's probably 3 things that are quite critical. One, we need to become much better at developing long-term relationships with industry so that we can understand the issues and challenges they have and begin to work on those challenges, as well as understanding the skill set. So that's kind of part of our normal business, but we need to extend it and be much more intentional around it. Secondly, we have to do a lot better job at inviting people from industry and the community to actually get to know us. And at the university right now, I'm having a great deal of fun by inviting people on campus to see the new Science Commons building and to take them through the laboratories and to get them to meet students. We had some industry folks on our campus earlier this week, even a U of L alum, and she wasn't aware of how things have changed in our sciences since she graduated, and she lives here, which means we have a lot more work to do from that side. And then I think we have to take a look as post-secondaries in the province with the fiscal and economic challenges that are going to exist for the next number of years, is we also have to find ways to extend our collaboration, because there's not enough money in the system for us all to do it all the time. And so we already have good relationships with Olds College and the work they're doing on their smart farm, with Lakeland, with the University of Alberta. And so we need to deepen those relationships. And probably what that means is tearing down some administrative barriers that prevent real good collaboration, which is, I guess, maybe it's the next version of how post-secondaries work together.
Thank you. Trevor.
Yeah, I mean, this summer, Lethbridge hosted a group from Inside Education, which is a provincial not-for-profit, and they had about 40 teachers from across the province, all self-admitted urban dwellers, who came to Lethbridge to learn more about agriculture. And so we spent some time over about 3 or 4 days with those teachers, who are all primarily elementary, but they were really trying to understand, how do they bring agriculture to life for their students? How do they bring more into the classroom? And I think that's where it starts. We have to start in the K-12 system. Agriculture is a huge part of the economy, but a lot of students aren't exposed to the concepts. They aren't taught where their food comes from, for example. They don't understand the processes before it ends up on their plate. So to me, it starts very early in the classroom, and by empowering teachers with tangible examples. And that's perhaps a challenge for everybody in this room. You all have community schools, you all live in communities, you're all part of your community. Can you engage with teachers? Can you provide tours of your facilities? Can you provide them with opportunities to engage students? And for me, it really starts there. Inside Education is great. It was the first time they'd really focused on agriculture and getting that into the classroom, but it was only 40 teachers. So we really have a humongous pile of work to do to get that message out and to really integrate that into our communities.
And full disclosure, I'm on the board of Inside Education, and we have a great event coming this March where we will have teams of 6 students from 20 schools across the province all converge at Olds College and immerse them in 4 days of what ag is. And what they'll learn there is it's everything to do with farming and ranching and production, but they'll also learn about technology, they'll learn about drones, they'll learn about satellites, they'll learn about algorithms, they'll learn about competitive market intelligence. It's going to be fun. So if you're talking to your kids at school, ask them if their teachers have applied to go, and go to insideeducation.ca and make sure those kids' schools apply. I know that we've got room for 20 schools, and we already have 40 applications. So let's have 60 applications, make it tough for us to pick.
I'm going to the back of the room. I'm not sure if the 2 gentlemen standing there are getting close to the mic that you wanted to ask a question. Not that I'm putting you on the spot. I'm just looking at the time that we have remaining. So is there anyone from the audience that'd like to step forward? Okay, so I'm going to turn it back to Trevor and to David. And what's the one thing you'd like everyone who's here today to remember tomorrow about Farmer 4.0?
From a personal perspective, I don't think there's been a more exciting time to be in the agri-food sector. And that's whether you're a student just beginning your academic training, whether you're a producer. Canada is one of only 6 countries in the world with the capacity to grow more food for export. And we can choose to be leaders in that revolution, or we can choose to pick up the pieces when the United States, Australia, Brazil, France get ahead of us. But we have the right amount of human capital, the right amount of natural capital, and we have the financial capital. We should be leaders. And so that's what I want everybody to leave from. It's not really a renaissance time for agriculture, but agriculture should take a much bigger economic bite out of the future of the Canadian economy.
Thank you. Trevor?
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I'm the guy that goes on vacation and goes to food shows, so that tells you a little bit about me. I think Lethbridge is well positioned to capitalize on this new trend and to really drive. We have the ability to lead globally. I really do believe that hashtag of Southern Alberta feeds the world. I think the key thing for this group to consider is how do you become part of the solution, right? So whether it's a skill gap that you've identified in your operation, whether it's the ability to attract workers, what is it you can do to make a difference? Like, how do you engage with, whether it's the post-secondaries or the education system, dare I say, small g government, wherever the solution lies, it's up to us all collectively to do what we can to engage. So find that place where you fit and where you can contribute to the solution and be a part of it, because it's not going to happen without everybody moving in the same direction.
Thank you. Thank you. I have 3 thank yous as we close off. Firstly, I'd like to thank David and Trevor for taking the time to be part of this panel discussion, this conversation. To both of you, thank you.
Thank you.
2 individuals that have put together Farming Smarter, and yourselves who have taken the time to be here, thank you for investing and gathering more knowledge so you can go out there and do what was just described in their closing comments in building our agriculture sector. And I would just like to say to our clients and near clients that are here today, thank you for allowing RBC to be part of your success. We stand beside you, we walk with you, and we live our purpose each and every day of helping our clients thrive and our communities prosper and our research, and we will continue to do thought leadership research and share it in many sectors to help build a stronger Canada. So thank you for taking the time today to be part of this. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you very much.